Budgeting is out for 2024, but probably not for the reason that you might think. This sounds a bit crazy coming from someone that is literally most known for their budget template, but I've always kind of been on this budgeting is out trend. Let's relate this to what's called planner fatigue. You know, you spend all of this time creating to-do lists and making a plan, but then you never actually accomplish anything because all of your time is spent in your planner. That's kind of how I feel like most people budget. When you spend all of your time creating a budget and planning for where you want your money to go, you end up not focusing enough on where your money is actually going, which obviously that's what's important if you actually want to make any type of progress with your money. So in this video, I'm going to break down 3 ways to budget less and actually make more financial progress in 2024. First is to recreate your weekly money habits. You probably only want to spend a very minimal amount of time per week on your money. Like, you don't want it to consume your life. I am super diligent and super in tune with where my money is going, but I really don't spend more than 10 to 20 minutes per week with my money. And that's because I have really nailed down my weekly money habits to spending the time on what's most important for keeping my money in check. This little pie chart that I created shows you the breakdown of where I think your time should be spent on a weekly basis checking in with your money. 10% of your time should be spent budgeting, so we're really not spending more than a few minutes a week on our budget, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that. 70% of your time should be spent tracking your spending. So like I said, creating a budget is creating a plan for where you want your money to go, and tracking your spending is focusing on where your money is actually going, and again, I'll show you exactly how to do that. And then the remaining 20% of your time on a weekly basis should be spent reflecting on your budget versus your actual spend. Let's go over exactly how to do this. This is the budget template that I've been using for the past 2 years. I love this template so much because it does exactly what I'm talking about in this video. It focuses so much less on budgeting and so much more on tracking your spending. Over 20,000 people have downloaded this template, and I will link it in the show notes for you guys as well if you're interested. So how exactly do you spend only 10% of your time every month budgeting? A lot of budget templates have you create an entire new budget every single month, and I don't love that because, again, I think we get into planner fatigue when it comes to our budget. Even if your income changes every month, your budget doesn't necessarily need to change. Even if your expenses change a bit every month, your budget doesn't necessarily need to change. For example, let's say your income is variable. Some months you make $4,000 and some months you make $6,000. Set your estimated income amount to $4,000. And then if you do end up making $6,000 in a month, that can be reflected when you're tracking your actual numbers in the monthly tabs. You can create your budget assuming you're only going to make $4,000, and if you do make $6,000 at the end of that month, you can decide how you want to allocate that extra money. If we go over to the monthly tabs, there's this transactions log, and this is where you're going to spend these 60 to 70% of your time every single week. Every week I come in here and I pull up my credit card transactions and bank account transactions, and I spend 10 minutes a week logging what I spent in the same categories that I created my budget in. So for example, we could come in here and under income, we could log that $6,000 amount, and now you can see that your expected was $4,000, but you actually made $6,000. As I continue to log transactions, the rest of this tab is showing me a ton of data on my budget versus my actual spend. So if it's halfway through the month and I'm already over my shopping budget, I know I need to cut back on shopping for the rest of the month. This is part of your reflection process, which is again taking up the other 20% of your time on a weekly basis. The other part of the reflection process is checking in on how your spending is looking year to date. This is the yearly summary tab. It's a great way to show how much you made so far this year versus how much you've spent so far this year. Once we get more data into this that shows you your total spend by categories, and all of these graphs show you your spending breakdowns year to date. This annual cash flow summary is a great snapshot of, again, how much money you made so far this year versus where that money has been going. So that's how I personally reduce planner fatigue in my budget. Again, just focusing much more of my time and energy on where my money is actually going rather than planning for where I want my money to go. My budget template also includes a 10-minute instructional video on walking you through exactly how to set up the template, how to create your budget, how to track your spending, how to utilize all the tabs, all of that. So again, I'll link that in the show notes, but let's get into my next tip for budgeting less in 2024. This tip is all about simplifying what's called your cash flow, and your cash flow is nothing more than how money flows in and out of all of your different accounts. If you're feeling overwhelmed from budgeting and tracking your spending, you might be kind of overdoing it from a cash flow perspective, and you might be making it a lot harder on yourself than you need to be. One really good place to start is to pull up a blank calendar. You can do this either on a paper calendar, or I made this one in Notion, but just start listing out when all of your bills and your paychecks and all of those things are hitting your account. Again, the idea here is just to kind of map out the flow of money. So when money is flowing in, when money is flowing out, then make a list of all of your accounts that you spend money on. Again, I did this in Notion, but on paper is totally fine. If you're spending on multiple credit cards, is that stressing you out? Your bills are kind of all over the place and you get stressed out about having enough money in your checking account to cover it. Maybe you can change your bill dates to be all the same day of the month. A combination of steps 1 and 2, so 1 being tracking your spending and 2 being simplifying your cash flow, will let you actually take advantage of step number 3, which is to automate as much as you can in your financial system. There are a few different things that you can and probably should automate in your financial system to make your life so much easier and allow you to really focus much more on your spending. First is your bills. This is a super easy one. I have all of my bills automated to automatically come out of my checking accounts and my credit cards so that I never have to log into my utility portals or anything like that. I was even able to automate my rent payment onto a credit card with the Bilt Rewards card, which is my absolute favorite credit card in my wallet right now because again, it lets you pay your rent on a credit card without that typical 3% convenience fee that you usually get hit with. So I can earn points that I use for travel literally just for paying my rent. This isn't sponsored, but I will leave a link to the Bilt card in the show notes. On that note, automating your credit card payments is super important. I personally spend on a few different credit cards every month because again, I like the credit card rewards, but I never carry a balance on any of my credit cards, and my credit cards are all set to auto pay for the entire statement balance by the statement due date so that I never have to worry about logging into my credit card portals and paying off my bills before the due date hits. Third, I automate my savings transfers. I personally use what are called sinking funds, which essentially means that I have different high yield savings accounts set up for my different savings goals. So I have an emergency fund, a travel fund, a holiday fund, a down payment saving. All of my sinking funds are in Capital One high yield savings accounts except for my home down payment savings, which I have in a Foyer savings account just because that savings account is specifically designed for home down payment saving. I can do an entire separate video about Foyer, or you can read more about them in the show notes as well. And last, I automate my investments as well. I can do an entire separate video on automating my investment transfers, but I have automated investments going into my Solo 401k, my brokerage account, and my Fundrise account. Automating all of these different pieces of my financial system really allows me to strictly focus on my spending because at the end of the day, your spending habits really are what allow you to have money left over to save, invest, pay down debt. So if you took anything away from this video, it is to budget less and track your spending more in 2024.